Zoe barely slept. The threat note replayed in her mind until dawn. By morning, she decided, silence would only embolden them. She slid the paper across Coleman's desk. He read it once, jaw tightening. "Do you know who?" "My guess is Richards, but she won't leave fingerprints." Coleman leaned back, eyes cold. "Then I'll make her reveal herself." Later that day, he announced sweeping audits of every department Richards oversaw. Staff scrambled, nervous. Meanwhile, Zoe continued her work, refusing to shrink under stares. At lunch, a young clerk whispered, "You inspire us. Don't stop." It gave her strength. That evening, Richards stormed into Zoe's office. Running to Coleman, "Pathetic. You're nothing but a maid in borrowed clothes." Zoe steadied her voice. "If I was nothing, you wouldn't be this afraid of me." Richards's face twisted. "Careful. Everyone falls eventually." She slammed the door. Minutes later, Zoe's phone buzzed with a message from Williams in HR. "Be careful. Whitmore's been shredding files all day. Looks like he's hiding something big." Zoe sat frozen. She had walked into a battlefield far larger than herself. And retreat was no longer an option. Whitmore moved first. He instructed HR to audit Zoe's credentials, quietly spreading rumors she had exaggerated her degree. Richards whispered to housekeeping staff, seeding jealousy. Within days, fragments of gossip trickled upstairs. She lied. She faked her resume. She thinks she's better than us. Zoe felt the shift. Colleagues who once smiled now avoided her. At lunch, she overheard a clerk mutter, "Fraud." She returned to her office shaken, only to find an anonymous envelope on her desk. Inside, photocopies of her 6 rejected scholarship letters, each stamped in red ink. Denied. Her chest tightened. Someone wanted her humiliated. That evening, Coleman summoned her. On his desk lay the same letters. "Care to explain?" he asked evenly. Zoe's throat went dry. "I wasn't denied for lack of ability. I was denied because I had no sponsors, no connections. Every application asked, 'Who recommends you?' I had no one." Coleman studied her, then slowly nodded. "Connections open doors. Talent keeps them open. You've already proven the second." He tossed the papers into the shredder. But Zoe knew Whitmore and Richards weren't done. They had tested the waters. The real attack was still coming. The Grand Plaza's ballroom shimmered with glass chandeliers as the Dutch and Chinese delegations arrived. Zoe stood beside Mr. Coleman, translating introductions with flawless precision. Her calm confidence contrasted with the tension buzzing around the room. When a Dutch executive made a cultural joke, Zoe softened the words in Mandarin, turning potential insult into laughter. Moments later, she reversed the flow, adding nuance that made the Dutch guests nod with approval. Coleman watched closely, his expression unreadable. At the back of the hall, Director Whitmore fumed. For years, he had buried Zoe's applications. Now, she stood at the center of the spotlight, winning over men who controlled millions. During a coffee break, he cornered her. "You're out of place here," he hissed. "No," Zoe said firmly. "I'm finally in the right place." Coleman approached mid-conversation. "Problem, Whitmore?" "Just ensuring staff stay in line," Whitmore muttered. "She's not staff," Coleman corrected. "She's my coordinator. Treat her accordingly." Zoe returned to the floor, heart pounding, but her voice never wavered. By evening, delegates were praising the Grand Plaza for its seamless communication. What none of them knew was that success rested on the shoulders of a former cleaner with a hidden gift. The morning after the French deal, the Grand Plaza buzzed with whispers. Word spread quickly. Zoe had saved Coleman from a multi-million-dollar blunder. Some staff praised her brilliance. Others muttered she had humiliated her superiors. Coleman called an emergency board meeting. Whitmore sat rigid, sweat glistening at his temple as Coleman recounted the mistranslation. "This hotel does not tolerate incompetence," Coleman said, his voice sharp, "or sabotage." He didn't name Whitmore directly, but every eye in the room turned his way. Outside the chamber, Richards intercepted Zoe. "Enjoying your little promotion?" she sneered. "You think Coleman will protect you forever? Men like him tire quickly. When he does, you'll fall harder than anyone." Zoe held her ground. "Maybe, but until then, I'll keep proving I deserve to be here." That night, exhausted, Zoe returned to her office. A single sheet of paper lay on her desk. No envelope, no signature, just one sentence typed in bold. "Go back to the basement, or next time you won't walk away so lucky." Zoe's hands trembled as she folded the note. It wasn't gossip anymore. This was a threat. And somewhere in the hotel, she knew Richards was smiling. The French partnership talks began in the Rosewood Chamber, a room draped in gold and crystal. Zoe translated smoothly, navigating between French executives and Coleman's team. Every phrase was precise, until a single line on the contract stopped her cold. Article 14, the French text promised exclusive rights for 5 years. The English version read 50, a catastrophic mistranslation. Zoe's eyes narrowed. She hadn't prepared this draft. She looked at Whitmore across the table. His smirk told her everything. "Is there a problem?" asked the French delegate. Zoe's voice was steady. "Yes, the document before you contains a serious error. It must be corrected before signatures." Whitmore leaned forward. "Nonsense. She's new. Perhaps she misread." Zoe calmly flipped both versions side by side, highlighting the discrepancy. Gasps rippled through the room. The French executive smiled thinly. "Good catch. Signing 50 years would have been impossible." Coleman's gaze hardened on Whitmore, but he said nothing until the meeting closed. Then, in private, "You tried to sabotage my deal," Coleman said coldly. Whitmore stammered, but Zoe spoke first. "And next time, he'll aim lower, at me." An hour later, Zoe stepped into the elevator with a new badge clipped to her blazer. International Relations Coordinator, her salary was more than 3 months of scrubbing floors. As she walked toward HR to complete paperwork, Manager Richards blocked her path. "Johnson, what are you doing here without your uniform?" Zoe held her gaze. "Working. At the direct request of Mr. Coleman." She let the badge gleam. Richards paled. "Impossible. You don't have the qualifications. Georgetown degree, fluent in 6 languages. My resume has been in the files for 6 years, along with 12 transfer requests you denied." Zoe left Richards speechless and continued on. In HR, she found an unexpected ally, Zoe Williams, a new recruitment analyst. "I read your file months ago," Williams confessed. "I couldn't believe you were in housekeeping. I tried to raise it, but Whitmore shut me down." That afternoon, preparing for the Dutch-Chinese conference, Zoe reviewed the event documents. Her stomach dropped. The Mandarin translations were sloppy, filled with errors that could spark offense. Coleman appeared in the doorway. "How did you know they were wrong?" "Because whoever wrote these knows the language, not the culture," Zoe replied, calmly rewriting every page. By the end of the week, Zoe's name carried through the halls. Executives requested her personally, praising her diplomacy. Housekeeping staff whispered in awe. The girl who once scrubbed toilets now sat in strategy meetings with billionaires. But not everyone applauded. Behind closed doors, Whitmore and Richards met in the dim conference room. "She made you look like a fool," Richards spat. "She embarrassed me in front of Coleman," Whitmore growled. "Now he thinks she's indispensable." They dug through her file, searching for ammunition. 6 scholarship rejections, Richards sneered. "We'll spin it as incompetence. If she was that good, someone would have funded her years ago." Whitmore's eyes gleamed. "Exactly, and if that fails, we'll fabricate a breach of conduct. Cleaning staff don't belong at executive tables." Meanwhile, Zoe worked late in her new office, reviewing proposals for an upcoming French partnership. Exhaustion tugged at her, but she pressed on. Every corrected phrase, every polished translation was proof she belonged. Coleman stopped by unexpectedly. "You've given this hotel something I couldn't buy. Respect abroad." He handed her a sleek black card. "From now on, you'll represent me directly. Use this to open doors." Zoe accepted, unaware her enemies were already sharpening their knives. Alone in her small apartment, the teller scrolled through her phone, dread coiling in her chest. Every headline screamed her downfall. Clips of her sneer replayed endlessly. Employers ignored her job applications. Friends stopped calling. She muted the news, but silence was worse. The internet never slept. She had become a symbol, her actions etched in infamy. At first, she had laughed at her suspension, assuming it would blow over. Now, weeks later, reality was crushing. Her face was branded the face of arrogance, her name tied forever to discrimination. She replayed the moment in her mind, the ID tossed, her words dripping with mockery. At the time, it had felt like nothing. Now, it was everything. She thought of the man, how he hadn't shouted or argued. He had simply looked at her with eyes that burned in silence. That silence haunted her more than any insult. She wanted to apologize, to undo what had been done, but the world had moved on, leaving her behind as collateral damage. She wasn't just jobless, she was irrelevant, discarded by the very arrogance she once wielded. The next morning, Zoe arrived early, determined to work despite the punishment. As she scrubbed the marble, the phone at the reception desk rang. "Johnson," called Jennifer, the head receptionist. "HR wants you, top floor." Zoe froze. The top floor belonged to executives, uncharted territory for cleaning staff. In the elevator, she felt invisible among suits discussing million-dollar deals. Inside HR, the director motioned her to sit. Zoe braced for termination. "Mr. Coleman has requested a meeting with you." Minutes later, Zoe stood in the billionaire's office, larger than her entire apartment. Coleman studied a folder. "Dutch, French, Italian, Mandarin, correct?" Zoe blinked. "How did you—" "Your resume. I asked HR for it after hearing you yesterday." "Georgetown honors degree in linguistics. 6 languages. Cleaning my hotel for 6 years." Her breath caught. "May I ask why?" Coleman pressed. "I applied 47 times, 12 internal transfers, all denied." "By whom?" "Manager Richards and Director Whitmore." Coleman wrote down the names, his jaw tightening. Then, "Tomorrow begins a trade conference with Dutch and Chinese executives. I need someone fluent in both." Zoe frowned. "You want me to clean their rooms?" Coleman smiled. "No, I want you as International Relations Coordinator, $5,000 a week.